I'm Alison Brown, talking to you from the NARM convention in Chicago.
And Alison, describe your music.
I'm a banjo player, and I come out of playing bluegrass music, which I learned in San Diego growing up as a teenager. But the music that I do now is mostly original and has a foot in bluegrass and a foot in jazz and fingers in other different kinds of music like Celtic music and folk music and such.
At what age did you decide you wanted to be a musician?
Well, it was a decision that was made in a lot of little baby steps because I started off playing when I was a small child, but always encouraged to think of music as an avocation rather than a vocation. So I went off to college and then to business school subsequently and worked in investment banking before I got a chance to do music professionally. And so it was just kind of a leap of faith into music, and it's kind of a reaffirmation on a daily basis that I want to be a musician, if that makes sense.
And what musicians did you listen to as a child?
Well, Earl Scruggs was my biggest initial influence. He's the one who made me want to learn to play the banjo. And then other great banjo players, Tony Trischka, John Hickman, Larry McNeely. And then as I started to write my own music, I've been influenced a lot by Joe Pass and Wes Montgomery and other great jazz guitar players. And Cannonball Adderley and other musicians from like the late 50s, early 60s jazz.
How many guitars or banjos do you own?
A small collection compared to many people. I've got a pre-war Mastertone banjo, which is kind of my prized possession. I probably have about 5 or 6 banjos and maybe 5 or 6 guitars.
Do you have any tips for children wanting to be musicians?
I do. I think that music is in all of us, and you should never let someone say, Aunt Polly tell you that you can't carry a tune or you don't have a voice or you can't sing a song. That's really not true. Each one of us has music inside, and we can all enjoy music on some level, whether it's just to have fun with your friends or whether you're playing professionally with other people to entertain people. So I think it's really important to draw out the music that's in you and use it as a way to connect with your friends and other people.
What was your first musical instrument?
I started off with the guitar.
Now, do you watch TV?
Some.
Like, do you watch American Idol?
Not American Idol, but I've seen the show. I don't watch it regularly.
What do you think about people going in and auditioning and actually trying to fulfill their dream and going into the music business that way?
Well, I think no matter how you get into music, it's a positive thing. I think that music is a positive thing for culture and for society and for connecting people to each other. The one thing that I don't like about American Idol is the fact that I feel like it's educating a generation of people to feel that music is something that you step up to a microphone and sing, and you rarely see people playing music. And I think instrumental music is just as valuable as vocal music, and in fact, the two things, when they're put together, are the most powerful of all. I believe that if you can quit, you should, and that sounds very harsh, but the reality is it's a very competitive business. If you want to be out there playing music, you have to have such a fire in the belly for it that you're going to do it no matter what. And it's really meant to be a positive statement, because for me, music just kept haunting me, and it was something that I really wanted to try to do, and I couldn't really find inner peace without trying to do it.
And your parents weren't very supportive, were they? I mean, they didn't want you to be a musician.
Well, they weren't unsupportive, but if your daughter is a banjo player, I think it's probably smart money to encourage her to have something to fall back on. One of the great things I think about being a musician is it gives you an ability to connect with other people on a different level than just normal social interaction. So, for example, you can play music with your friends, and there's nothing better than making music with your friends. And then you can make music with people who aren't your friends that become your friends. And I've found that touring all over the world, even if I get a chance to play with musicians who don't speak the same language that I speak, we can sit down and play music together, and it's like the international form of communication. And quickly you find that those strangers become your friends and people that a lot of times you have a long relationship with over many years. And I think it's a wonderful way to draw generations of people together, too. I think about going to the Shetland Islands Folk Festival up in the North Sea of Scotland and seeing little kids and grannies playing music together and sharing the traditional tunes of the Shetland Islands. And I fear that that's something that we may be losing in our culture. And when I see it so strong and alive in other cultures, it makes me feel like it's very important for us to realize the significance of that, try to embrace it and develop that in the States.
Do your children have music class in school?
Our children do, because they go to private school, and they're lucky to have music twice a week. I know in public schools, even in Nashville, which is Music City, the music program is very much at the end of the list, and we're working hard. We have a very proactive mayor in Nashville, Mayor Dean, who really sees the importance of music, and we're really working on developing that in the public schools.
And what do you think? Do you think that it's up to the parents to get involved, to put that money back in the system, or do you think it's up to the nation to actually find funds for that?
I think all of the above. I think it's important for parents to try to expose their children to anything that might help them develop their talents and their unique personalities. And I think it's important on a governmental level and educational level for us to put arts back in the schools, because I really do think that the arts are a hallmark of a great culture. And I think it's a shame to see other cultures get ahead of us on that score. And one of the things I've been really active in is bringing the National Folk Festival to Nashville, which is a free 3-day folk festival that focuses on American roots music traditions. And I'm really excited that we're going to have a free to the public music festival in Nashville, because I think through that we can help to shore up the music education and music exposure in our town.
You live in Nashville. Let's talk about the flooding. What happened? Was your house destroyed? And then talk about the Grand Ole Opry.
Well, our house, we were relatively fortunate. We had a foot and a half of water in the basement, and it's caused some damage, but nothing that can't be cleaned up and fixed over time. I played a show with Bobby Osborne from the Osborne Brothers in Denver last weekend, and he'd been on the Opry stage 12 hours before the flooding really reached its peak. And he told me that the Opry stage was 2 feet underwater, and the water went all the way to the back of the auditorium. I think just the last 2 rows weren't underwater. And it's very much unprecedented in Nashville. Most people aren't insured for it, and most people don't expect that kind of thing to happen. And I think that the city will be dealing with the repercussions of the flood for a long time, but on the other hand, it's, as many kind of natural disasters do, has really drawn the community together, and I think in many ways will make us a stronger community.
There's still water rationing over there, is that right?
Yeah, there are 2 water treatment plants in Nashville. One of them was knocked offline, so we're kind of operating at 50% of our normal capacity, so everybody was encouraged to do their part to not consume as much water. So coming from Southern California, that was something I wasn't completely unused to, but for Nashville, to be looking at so much water and rationing water at the same time is kind of ironic.
Now, what are the kids doing? Are they going back to school? How are they dealing with it, do you know?
Yeah, metro schools were closed for a whole week after the flood. Our kids were back in school within a couple of days, and it's interesting. I have a 3-year-old, and he's still concerned about the water that he saw in the basement. So I think that those kinds of things that we as adults maybe are more able to process and deal with, it's a little bit harder for kids, and I'm sure it's something that they won't ever forget.
What about the Grand Ole Opry? Do you think it's going to be fully restored soon, or it's going to take a while?
I can't imagine that it won't take a while, but luckily, the proceedings that usually take place at the Opry House can be moved to the Ryman Auditorium, so the Opry will go on.